Hello and welcome to In the Art Scene podcast, an art podcast that has it all. I'm your host, Galina Marquez, and I invite fascinating people to talk about their personal creative journeys, success stories, and inspiration. We talk about art business and marketing, how to find your creative voice, and all the new trends in the art world like NFT, AI, and such. Join me and my guest for today's conversation. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to In the Art Scene podcast. I am having as your guest another amazing guest today. Her name is Vittoria Colonna. Do I pronounce it correctly?
Yeah, that's perfect.
And oh my God, she's calling in from all the way from Florence. Guys, just, take a minute to absorb it. So Victoria is an amazing creative from the information that I gathered while doing my homework, because this is actually the first time we're talking in person. Mm-hmm. She is an amazing artist. She's painting. She's working with textiles. She is creating mind-blowing films. She is a great storyteller, and now I think it's the good place to just give it away to her to introduce herself properly. So hello again, my fellow Gemini. We just discovered it. It's so awesome. We almost share a birthday, guys.
One day apart.
One day apart.
That's crazy. That's crazy. But there's so many Geminis. Thank God there's so many Geminis as well. Thank God.
Yes.
Oh,
World would be like a dark hole without Geminis, right?
Yeah, so people are like, oh, but Geminis are so two-faced. I'm like, no, we've got 10 faces.
Yeah. That makes it more interesting.
I know, it is. It's totally interesting. And I think, I suppose in all the things I do, I am a typical Gemini. I think I'm just very much about communication. And I communicate through color, through kinesthetic material, whether that be paint or textile, or I even do performance art. And I'm a storyteller. Yeah, I'm also a filmmaker. So I suppose I'm just trying to find an understanding of my humanity and to play in this incredible playground called Earth. And what can I create? What use my imagination? And so I think that's pretty much, I feel I'm a creator. That's what I call myself, that, or sometimes a professional dreamer. I call myself all different types of things, but simply I'm just a very curious creative. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that on your Instagram, professional dreamer. I love that. I might steal it for something. But you know what? Yeah, I was going through your website. I was going through your Instagram. Well, first of all, your Instagram is like an amazing a gallery of artwork in itself because of the photographs and everything. It's just it's a eye candy. And then I was you're a winning filmmaker, you're doing amazing paintings, you're working with textiles, you're like so many different things. And I had this a thought in the back of my hand, like I am operating under the notion that everybody is telling you need to find your voice, you need to stick with your style, and if you are spreading yourself too thin, you're never going to make it. And I'm like, okay, I'm spreading myself too thin. This is why I am not making it. And then here you are. I'm looking at you. You are freaking making it in every possible way of life, creatively. I mean, now it makes sense because you're a Gemini. But my question,
yeah.
But my question is, I don't know, how did your creative journey start, and how are you managing all those different directions?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I ask myself that sometimes in the moments of the pause, I kind of go, oh my God, why am I so exhausted? And then I have to take a moment just to go, like deep breaths. Meditation is my savior. Yoga is my savior. Being in nature is my savior. Okay, so how did I get started in this? I don't think I really got to choose this. I think it chose me. I think, I think I was creative before. I mean, how do I say this? the fact that I'm the daughter of my mother, I think would explain a lot. I mean, she's still alive, but unfortunately she's got Alzheimer's now. So when I say she was, I refer to the past tense, because unfortunately that woman that I call my mother is now slowly disappearing from reality, which is heartbreaking. But, growing up with her, she was the most incredible creative. Like, everything she did became a work of art. And my father was very intellectual. They both loved art. They both loved beauty. I mean, I grew up around beauty. The importance of beauty was essential, even to how the dinner was on the table, even to, my mum used to make our outfits for us as kids. And there was always this, I suppose, an aesthetic choice. I grew up around a lot of beauty, and being on a farm in Ireland. My mother was a very eccentric individual, so I think I kind of unconsciously probably gathered that. I was also craving attention, so I would be like the singer, the performer, I would get them to come and watch me perform with the dolls, and oh look, they're marrying each other and whatever. So but ultimately I think really, I didn't get screamed at when I was drawing on the walls. I think there was a kind of appreciation. I remember in a small tiny room with my sister, I used to be drawing snails on the wall, and my mum was kind of upset, but she was like, oh, but they're beautiful. So I understood beauty in that time. And then I think the moment where there's a key moment, I would say, that I realized that art would be in my life forever, was a moment when I think I was about 5 or 6. I had this teacher called Lynn Fitzgerald. She was fantastic. She was amazing. I was in this small, tiny little school called Nuns Cross in Ashford, in Wicklow. So it's like an hour from Dublin, in the middle of like nowhere practically. And one day, this is a teacher. Normally she go, okay, kids, here you draw a banana, you draw this, you draw that. Oh, look at the sky is blue. What's blue? It's kind of, she wasn't patronizing so much. But I remember one time she came in and she was in a bad humor, and she drove over a crow. She killed a crow, squashed it, and she brought it to the table, and she just flung it on the table. And she goes, kid, draw that. And in that moment, I remember going, oh my God, this is beautiful. And I remember, some of the kids were upset, they were crying. She's like, kids, draw, now look at it. What do you see? Look beyond it. And I remember in that moment, I always looked at macabre stuff in the same way. Like that for me was a huge eureka moment. I remember that. And I was very, very young. I don't think an art teacher could do that today, to be honest, but fair play to her. She didn't hide anything. And I think you weren't really being taught. She just opened your eyes to things. And I think for me, that was the moment where I realized, yeah, I'm going to be that person. Hopefully it'll open up people's eyes. Hopefully. Yeah.
All right. Well, for a second, give me 1 second to just collect my jaw from the floor.
Oh my God.
I'm remembering so teachers are critical, because they can make it or break it for you.
Yeah,
and I had a totally different experience. If I had a teacher who would bring a dead crow and say, kids, draw this, probably my creative life would have turned absolutely differently. I had the most boring teacher. She was so boring and so meticulous. And when we were studying black and white graphics, and I made my vase or whatever vessel we were painting, I imagined that there's a woman coming out of the handle, and she looked at it, and then she grimaced at it and said, well, it looks like surrealistic. I was like, so I don't like surrealism. and she downgraded me.
Yeah, but that's a frustrated artist. That's the one who should not be teaching. Being a teacher is not for everyone. It is not for everyone. I had one teacher, I remember, in art college in Rome, in the academy, and everybody was afraid of her because she knew the power she held. She used to teach anatomical drawing design. And I remember she was the harshest critic you'd ever have. I remember one time I came in with all my sketches and I did all this. Like I always made sure I was different from everybody else. Like I made sure, okay, if everybody's drawing on white paper, I'm going to draw on black, or I'm going to draw on gold, I'm going to draw on silver. And I was always experimenting with different things. I was actually too experimental for the college because they're Italian and they like to things, traditional. You got to learn this way and then you do what you want. But I was very rebellious in that way. And anyway, but I remember I brought in all my sketches and my really detailed with oil bars and this. And she practically said, crap. It's crap. It's this. It's terrible. This is shameful. It's this. And she went into this whole monologue. And I remember going, oh, I've got it. She's like, you come back next week and you redo this all again. I was like, okay. And you know what happened? I didn't do one thing. I didn't do anything. I brought back the exact same work a week later. And she was like, oh, this is amazing. Oh, ragazzi, come here. This is amazing. Look at this. You see the way she did? You see this? You see this? You see what she did? I mean, I learned in that moment, it's just a game. You don't know what your teacher's going through. One moment it's this, or one moment it's that. It depends on the time, the day, the hour, And I think she was
hot flashes or whatever.
She was a frustrated creative. And her biggest she was always very much proud that her best work of art was the sun. I never met the sun, but I remember we would hear about the sun like he was the sun, moon, and stars, and he was the masterpiece of her life, which I always thought was kind of beautiful to hear. But I think she was another frustrated creative. And again, sometimes that could be taken out on the pupils. Yeah. Definitely.
All right. It sounds like you have a theory about frustrated creatives. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
No, I have a theory of frustrated creatives. Actually, I do. Sorry. Actually, now it's coming out. It's coming out like a very, like a horrible pimple. You just have to squeeze and pop out it comes. So, okay. So, what my theory on frustration is, I think we forget why we began creativity in the first place. It came from a place of love, right? It came from a place of like, oh my God, I get to create. You can, that's the kind of a thing. It's so important, that imagination. I remember as a kid, like everything I thought I would draw or make, I thought they would become real. And sometimes I would feel really bad if something was badly done. But then I was like, no, that's okay. That's created that way. So it will be like that. So I had a very kind of crazy imagination, and that's I definitely relate that again, growing up in the country with only like animals to play with and my poor little sister who couldn't talk or walk yet, but so I learned how to build a very strong imagination. And I remember I loved creativity. It was always a part of me, and it was something I felt very, very confident in. And then I remember going back to this time when I was in Rome and I was like 18. Oh, I don't know if this person would ever hear this, but anyway, I'll say it. I used to date this guy whose mother was an artist, and I was 18, and I remember her taking me aside, and she obviously didn't like me, but anyway, but she told me that I was too happy, I was too cheerful, I was too colorful to be an artist, because artists suffer, they're lonely, they're this and the other, and I took that to heart. I really took that to heart. And she said to me, Vittoria, she read my tarot cards, and she was like going, your life isn't theater. You're more of a theater person. You like people. As an artist, you'll always be lonely. You don't like people. Artists don't like people. They're this, that, and the other. So she kind of fit the typical stereotype thing. And you know what? At 18, being very impressionable, I took that upon myself, and somewhere in my subconscious, I thought like, crap, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. I'm good enough for her. I'm not good enough for the teachers. I'm not good enough for that. And that starts to drag you down, because then you start creating from a place of fear and not so much love. So are you creating it for other people? Are you creating it for yourself? Are you creating for the joy? All this. So, and to cut a long story short, I left art for a bit. And I went into, funny enough, I did go into acting, and then I went into directing and storytelling. And for me, that was so refreshing, because especially with filmmaking, because it's such a beautiful bastard of the arts. I mean, that's the way I describe it, because it's not pure. It's not just one thing. I got to use my musical talents, my acting talents, my painting talents, everything. It becomes a collaborative art form. So you're working with people from all walks of life, and and now I'm actually getting to a phase where I find that sometimes a bit stifling. I like to go back to being the hermit, to being alone, to working just with me and one material instead of having to deal with 50, 60 people. That's a lot of egos. That's a lot of creative ideas and inputs that you have to navigate through. So I would say a part of me froze the visual art for a bit. It was always in there. I mean, I put it definitely in the music videos I did. It was like, for me, it was like moving paintings, and I had so much fun with that. And I treated, the musicians like they were colors, okay, or whatever it was. And then when I moved to LA, actually, I got back into painting. Thanks to a wonderful man called Walter Hubert, which I actually kind of get very emotional thinking of, because I moved in with him and his husband, and for the first 6 months when I moved over, and he had this beautiful art studio, and of course that the memories of the smells of paints and and he says, you can use my studio if you want to paint. And I go, really? And thanks to him, I've got to say, he's an abstract painter, and I started to paint again. And by God, did I paint. I think I went through so much growth, and it came back from a place of love again. And I felt very nurtured in that ambience. And he never interfered. He let me take over. God help him. He gave me his clean studio. By the time I left, it was like color everywhere. And I felt like, I'm so sorry. And he goes, no, it should be used. And I did this whole series of cosmic work. And then I started working with another Japanese artist, Miki Yokoyama. And then I started showing here and there in Los Angeles. And then I went to Japan, was doing performance art. So I kind of got back into the art through love again. And ever since then, even in the moments, like, I go through a lot of rejections. I go through a lot of moments where I'm celebrated or whatever, but I try not to fall to the victim of that, because I have to look always inwards and go, okay, is this still giving me joy? And that's does it exhaust me? Does it fill me up? Like sometimes, that feeling of going to bed, knowing you're so exhausted, every bone in your body hurts because you've been working in a certain way, but because you've distorted your neck, or you've been painting very tall, high ceilings, whatever. And at the same point, I go to bed happy because I know that I was of service to creativity. And especially last year in Topanga, I was there for about 6-7 months, and I created like an incredible amount of work, and I got to play with textiles and experimenting, and I literally just closed myself off in Topanga, and I just worked and worked and worked and worked and worked and worked, and it was like a drug, actually. And yeah, so what can I say? I think that's where I think frustration comes, that you have to remember, go back to the child, go look at children, they are the teachers. They are your teachers. So that's my theory, because I think sometimes our intellectualism and our, also, it's funny being here in Florence now. Obviously I'm surrounded by the masters, yeah, and I kind of sometimes feel, obviously I'm in awe of them, inspired, but at the same time, like, I want to do something completely different. I want to do something that my soul yearns to do, and also of my time. So yeah, I would say that.
Well, yeah.
Sorry, I have to remember how to breathe sometimes, and actually refrain and not speak too fast.
No, it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful, and I kind of get it, and I agree with you. And it's the whole time you were talking, I was kind of rolling through like my student years and all all
Mhm.
the things and all of the false beliefs that I picked up along the way. And it's just like, this is so sad because those people who are trying to influence us with those false beliefs, they're deeply unhappy. So
Mm.
instead of, trying to make themselves a little happy, they're just bringing everybody else to their level. Like,
It's so interesting. It's people make sacrifices all the time, and I think the bitterness or the frustration come from expectations, or the expectations haven't been met. And I get that still. That's human. That's human. That's being human. That's just our journey. And I think that's why I always say go back to the seed of love for what you're doing. And if you don't have it, if it's not growing, go and discover it. Go out. There's inspiration everywhere. Just like the crow that's just been run over, see the beauty in it, and for me, there's no excuse. Like, I go through moments of absolute bleakness at times, and I always go back to the ones that there's certain artists I'll always go back to. I'll watch documentaries on them, I'll read books about them, I'll go through their, and I look at what did they do, or where did their influence come from, or it, you have no idea where inspiration is going to come from. I mean, that's the beauty of it. It's the little spirits that are wandering around that want to work through you, and they want to communicate to you. And I had that in Topanga with the Strelitzia plant. I did a whole series based around this big giant, like 20-foot Strelitzia that was outside my back window that became my muse. And I ultimately collaborated with this plant. I don't know how to explain it. It became this absolute muse for me. I worked with her shadows. I would speak to her every day. It was like, oh, hi, how's it going? And because she was like the shadow over I was painting, she just completely came in. And I really feel she became a muse. She became an inspiration for me. That, it doesn't always just come from us. It's listen to what the universe is trying to communicate to you, or communicate through you. So it doesn't always come from us. I believe sometimes we are conduits, or as I would like to think, we're in collaboration with the artistic spirits, or whatever they may be. It's the mystery.
it is, isn't it?
Yeah, totally.
Well, do you remember when the first time, like your first work that I'm trying to form the question, that kind of made it out, like your first public success, if you will?
God, was my first public success? Oh, um, I would say, actually, if there was a documentary I did called Identities,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like 5 stories, this is now, we're talking 2008, 2009, so like we're talking over 10 years ago now. And it was actually quite ahead of its time, because I was charting the transgender community, like the gender. Well, what is gender? And I took 5 stories of 5 individuals. I had a drag queen, a drag king, F to M trans man. I had another pre-op transsexual, and I had a transvestite. So, and they were all very personal, humane stories. But so the documentary is filmed in a black and white manner because I felt they were judged in the black and white manner by
Mm-hmm.
society. Are you male? Are you female? Are you healthy? You're not healthy. So, and it also made it timeless, and I loved that effect. But each character had a performance art piece, and in that performance art piece, it was colorful. It was the world through their eyes. They could be anything they wanted. And for example, Sahara, who was this pre-op transsexual, as she would call herself, Ladybird, and she would say, I belong to both worlds. And so taking from her documentary footage all the things she's repeating, I came up with this visual that, okay, she's going to be a mermaid. I'm going to put her in this pool. We're going to make her up this gold mermaid, and she's eating these fish. And because fish can change gender and they belong to both worlds, and like the mermaid. And she was incredible. So I did these very, very seductive, like really beautiful performance art pieces where they became almost actors within their own gender dysphoria, so to speak. And for me, I think that was the proudest thing I did, because the documentary won a lot of awards. It traveled the world. I think it was banned in Russia, actually, funny enough. I think there was...
I am not surprised.
I remember it was supposed to go to a festival, and then the festival's closed because it's an LGBT festival, and it was like, oh, this uproar. Yeah, I think coming to think of it, that just popped into my mind. So anyway, as a side note, but anyway, it traveled, and it was really bringing awareness to the community, but it brought it in a very humane way, but also bringing in that imagination and bringing in that your life is the work of art. Like the fact that you get to create what you want with your life. And these individuals, they taught me so much. Like I changed as a person making that with them, because I realized you cannot run away from who you are. You can never do that. It will catch up with you. Your soul will always guide you. And sometimes we don't listen to it. And then, life will get tougher if you don't listen to the calling. And I was so moved and touched by these individuals, and those performance art pieces. Then at one point they got included in the Biennale in 2011 as part of this Italian pavilion that Scarbi was putting in. So they took Italian artists living abroad, and they did a kind of montage of all their works. And so I remember seeing this dream for me was like, oh my God, I actually see my work in the Arsenale, in the Biennale, So it was a side part of it, but it was just, for me, that was a very moving thing. Also because I witnessed the change it carried out in people's lives, and also how these individuals who were not actors were incredible in these performance art pieces. So for me, that was a very profound way of marrying my past of a creative past with traditional, documentary storytelling. And but I suppose I think that was the first moment, and I realized, oh, this is my calling, is to be just the storyteller. But it's funny, life doesn't work like that. It's kind of going circles for me. So I feel I'm juggling a lot, But and I'm still marrying those two worlds together. So at the moment, I'm working on a very special project, which I've been working on for 10 years, which I can't really probably talk about just yet. But hopefully you will know about it in the future, 2 years. But that will probably be one of my biggest gifts I can give this world, especially for women and for artists, because I feel that has also become more of a calling. I'm not a political person, but I am about equality, and I feel there's still an inequality. So that for me is a sensitive spot, because also as the, growing up, you can always, girls can have a hobby, I've had many times like, you can't be a director, but you're a woman. I mean, nowadays you never get away with that. But, I would hear that a couple of times, or even in the art world, it's still overshadowed by a lot of men. And, I love men, no disarray against them. But like, if we can rattle off as many female artists on one hand as we can males, I'd be very happy when that will happen.
Yep.
So I suppose I don't know if I still have made it at all. I'm still constantly trying to go beyond and stretch myself, and also do what scares me a bit. Actually, a lot. I think that's important as well. There's still a lot of things that scare me, and at some point, the procrastination, you just have to kind of go. You just have to dive in and do it. And if you fail, so what? You try. You gave it all. It's not a failure then, because you will ultimately learn something, and you move on to the next thing. So that's what I try to I try to keep to that philosophy. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about that, but I just wanted to make a comment that when that project is out, finally, because right now I'm having ants in my pants because I cannot know what it is. But this is the problem I have with my husband. Like, there's something cool I know, but I cannot tell you because I promised someone to not to tell. I was like, why are you bringing this up? Now I can't sleep. Anyway.
No, but you know, it's very interesting. The moment that project has, it's based on a woman, funny enough, Russian Polish artist. I won't say any more, but she's been one of the biggest inspirations for me because I didn't have female artist role models. I always get emotional when I think about her because she just was so against the grain. I can't talk about it too much, but let's just say I've been working on telling her story for like years, and it's not been easy to get off the ground, but now we're getting there, and it's very exciting, the people I'm working with and bringing this together. And so hopefully, yes, that will be a full time.
Awesome.
That will be the biggest project next, definitely. Yeah.
Is it going to be a documentary or? No, not a documentary. Okay, so anyway, when this project is out, I'm going to be having you back on the podcast because I actually like bringing up stories of very influential women in arts. And, funny enough, I've had now 2 or 3 episodes about, so I've had an episode about Corita Kent. Corita Kent. I recently I had an episode about Beatrice Wood.
Beatrice Wood, yeah.
Absolutely, like I was mind blown. Not only she was an inspiration for the Rose in the Titanic, James Cameron's Titanic, because of her life and how she lived and being rebellious, and she was such an influential figure in the whole Dada movement.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, and I mean she was.
Story.
Yeah, so I was really inspired by it, and I was like, oh, everybody needs to know that. But those episodes, for whatever freaking reason, are not doing well. And it makes me mad. It makes me absolutely mad. Like, guys, you have no idea what you're missing. Those stories are they are untold. Those women were like known and influential in their time, but then a decade, 2 decades later, they almost vanish. And it's amazing that there are someone, like sometimes it's just one person or like a very small group of people who are trying to maintain their story, their legacy. And like with Corita Kent, there was a whole fight, like last year, there was a whole fight with the city of Los Angeles, who was trying to demolish the building where Corita Kent's original studio was because they wanted to make another parking lot.
Oh,
yeah,
right.
and luckily,
up with her name, if she was lucky.
Yeah. Luckily, there was enough community, and the Corita Kent Center has done a good job spreading the word and collected enough signatures to keep the building. But it would have been just removed from the face of Earth forever. And
history is you can't. That's not good. The history is to remind us.
Yeah.
To remind us of these things. But of course, we keep repeating history. These things always come in cycles. We don't know. But maybe the first artists were women in the caves. While the men were going out hunting, maybe they were like, putting their hands in blood and maybe their own blood and putting it up on the cave. And how do we know? How do we know? I mean, the woman's always been a great muse and inspiration and of fertility but there's always been creativity there. That's why, actually, I've got to say, that's why I'm drawn to a lot of the textiles and the weaving and stuff. Also because it reminds me of my own female lineage of my mother's side, because her mother was a seamstress. And my mother used to make things like incredible clothes. She used to put upholster everything in the room. Like even the walls had material on it. It was crazy. So I I think that's in my blood, and I think that somehow that makes me work out the stories in my mind. Like I remember at one point, while I was in Los Angeles, I went through this phase of making loads of pom-poms. I'm sure a lot of my friends would laugh at me talking about this, because I went crazy. I made these crazy pompuchos, like, and I put them into, I made a whole thing about them, like performance art. They became art pieces. And I was literally making thousands of pom-poms, sometimes huge and big, all different sizes. And at some point I got a neighbor, this woman with arthritis in her hands. She didn't go out much. She didn't talk to anybody. And one day I bumped into her in the little alleyway and I said, hey, da, da, da. And she saw what I was doing. She's like, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm making pom-poms. And so she's like, oh, so would you like to join me? And she was, okay, but my hands are sore. And I go, don't worry about it. Don't worry. So I gave her the yarn. I taught her how to do it. And she loved it so much. And it started helping her. And she used to come around, have a cup of tea. And we just like these women weaving, making pom-poms. And she was so happy. She's like, I made more pom-poms, you know? And it was like, it was the hilarious thing. But I was like, this is what our ancestors used to do. Women used to come together, make tapestries and put our stories into it. Look at the Aboriginal women. They're the ones who are always, you know, so it is a part of our type of storytelling. So there's something in that's speaking to me at the moment, especially through the textile of working through the hands. There's something about that which connects to the brain and the heart and opens up all these other channels of communication. So for me, that's exciting, you know, so yeah.
Yeah. Well, I am excited now I'm going to be waiting for that project to come out.
Which is not much textiles in that one, but yeah.
Anyway, no, I get, I get it. I used to work with textiles a lot, but mostly as a student, and I was over it because it was the same school where I had that teacher who told me that surrealism is a bad thing. So
you say, is your teacher still alive?
I have no idea. She was an elderly woman back then. It was like 20 years ago. I hope she is, but
maybe just send her a little prayer and hope that she's.
That's a good idea, actually. I will do that.
Because maybe that in a way she's told you what you don't want to be.
I actually like surrealism.
Oh, you do like surrealism? I thought she did.
She did not. She did not. So she was against it. But for me, Salvador Dali.
You liked.
Yeah, Salvador Dali was my inspiration since I was 8, and like the book of his art just landed on my lap, and I was hypnotized for like weeks. I was just going through this. I was like,
I went to catechese last year. Actually, I was in catechese where we had to go, and I remember I was so excited. Like there was like 4 of us, like as in tourists in the place because COVID, you know. I managed to get in, and I was walking around his house, and it was like, wow.
I've been
4 hours. It's like, Mom, you have to go now. And I was like, yeah, I'm just go through this again. And you know, it wasn't as surreal as I thought it would be. It was actually quite whitewashed and neutral because it made sense where he could focus, you know, and he had this incredible garden, and he even did like, you know, his eggs were everywhere there, and like a half-wrecked ship that he tried to turn into something. It actually felt a bit like Burning Man at times going through it. I was like, wow. But that was very inspiring. And actually being there, it made total sense how the environment informed his work. And even the details, his bed, he had this window in his bedroom, and he put a mirror in the window in a way that he slanted the mirror. So when the sun came up, he would get the first glance of it in the morning through this mirror. I mean, the guy was a total genius. I mean, I was completely blown. I was so inspired by it. It was amazing.
Yeah, I about 12 years ago, I had like a whole trip around Catalonia because I really wanted to visit all the places. So I've been in Pubol, I've been in obviously Barcelona, his museum and theater, and I went to Caracas, but we were just like 15 minutes late after the closing time. So we just, I was so bummed. So I gotta get back. But the whole area, Port Ligat and Caracas were just like, this is like, even the air and something about the light and the colors and everything is just really uplifting. But
Actually, do you know Feeney?
no,
That you would love her work. I think it's Leonora Fini. You should check out her work.
I
She's
will.
insane, like, amazing, surrealist. She was like another incredible
I will.
surrealist.
I will.
You should check out her work. Yeah, you would love it.
But speaking of influential women, I am actually fascinated by the story of Salvador Dali's wife. I have done a lot
Mhm.
of research and
Yeah.
have you?
I not too much. All I know is that she was older than him. She was his muse. She must have had the patience of a saint. I
Oh
remember
no, far from
no,
it.
far
No.
from it. Well, I one thing I thought was interesting, the day she died, he left their home in Catequez. He just took up, he left everything there and just left, got on a boat and just went off. And I thought that was because he really was obsessed with her. I mean, he really worshipped her. But I don't know too much about her actually, so maybe you can tell me more.
Oh yeah, that's another hour conversation at least. So we're not gonna fit it in this podcast. But I actually, first I got obsessed with his work. He's absolute genius, and then it was just coming back in his work. It's coming back that she's a muse, and she was pushing him, and she was working toward his success. So she was a manager, and she was an inspiration, and she was dragging him places. She was talking to people. She was getting commission work. She put them both on a boat during World War II. Sailing to New York, where he actually got his first commercial success, really. She was not creative herself, and like she was far from being an angel. Like she left her husband and her daughter to be with Salvador Dali, and I don't even I'm not even sure it was because of love. I almost feel like she knew that there's a potential there. So it's a very, very difficult, absolutely fascinating. She had no boundaries. She would, wear his weird creations and be his almost like a billboard, and the crazier the better. But at the same time, they have this really toxic codependent relationships, very difficult, sexually, and she had lovers, he had lovers, and all kinds of crazy things.
Was she with Max Ernest, or am I just getting this with somebody else? Was she with Max Ernest before him?
No,
Very famous
Paul Elior.
Vero, Vero. Yeah, it's so funny when I hear stories like that about all these incredible women. I always think, especially with male artists, I'm just thinking, again, there's a line as behind every great man, there's a greater woman. The joke about, but how many? I would love to see men carry on like that with women. I mean, I don't know. More men in my life have been like, Vittoria, Jesus Christ, can you just relax? But yeah, unfortunately, I never found that perfect balance. No, never. But I think there's always a bit of friction. Being with creatives is not easy. But anyway,
someone has to sacrifice. Someone has to sacrifice.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, I was planning on asking you all kinds of boring questions, like how you ended up in Italy and all of that. So if you want to talk about it, I am.
Oh my God!
But I think we're having so much better conversation now, talking about women.
Talking about difficult creative relationships. Love brought me to Italy. Well, actually, it was. I always say destiny brought me here. My father wasn't well, and I came over in the same time. I met this American artist, and we fell madly in love during COVID. And yeah, that was very interesting, being two creatives. I still have a love for him and a respect, but I don't think we could have been together. And it was we actually tried painting together, and that was a really interesting metaphor of the relationship. Like at the beginning of it, it was like this beautiful dance, like we just completely in this movement, making this piece. We even wrote time lapse. It actually was a big giant piece. He was living in Carrara up in the Marble Mountains, and and I was back and forth between Florence, and between then it was COVID, it was all these kind of crazy rules. Actually, it was really, really locked down and whatnot. And we didn't finish the piece. And I was like saying, okay, well, just don't touch it until I'm back, famous last words, don't touch it until I'm back. And he's like, no, of course I'd never do that. And when I came back, he completely repainted stuff. And he goes, I'm so sorry, I couldn't help it. And I was like, oh. And it was like finished for me. I saw it and I was like, okay, well, there's nothing more I can add to this. It's finished. And he's like, no, you need to pay. You need to pay. And I go, no, it's finished. And he's like, no. So I was there trying to paint on it, and he would come back and forth, and he'd look, and he kind of, his furrowed brow would go, yeah, no, I don't like it. It's not good enough. And at one point I just lost it. And I just slapped my hand in orange paint, and I just smacked the face of the painting. It's like, it's finished. and that was pretty much how our love affair, it kind of got very two creative egos. It was very funny, but I know we're friends now, but there was a lot of lessons learned in that. Yes, I will say that.
Do you have pictures, or you mentioned that you have a time lapse? I really want to put it in the show notes.
You want to put the show notes? Oh my God, I'll have to ask. I'm sure he wouldn't mind. God, he would love it. Yeah, I have the time lapse of it before it got smacked in the face with orange paint. Yeah, actually, I think it was great. And I remember he was really hurt, and he thought, he was like, God, could you do that? It was so aggressive. And I'm like, it was like this surge of energy was my truth when like smack him on the face almost. On the face.
I love that.
I've never smacked him in the face, but I did on the art piece. And actually, it was just, for me, it was perfect. It was finished. Yeah, I can probably send you a little time lapse of that.
That would be absolutely awesome. That would be a treat for everybody.
Really? Oh God. Yeah. Oh yeah, the dream of being with another painter. Not easy. I've been with also another film director, and it can be challenging sometimes. You want to be in a, sometimes, maybe I should just try like a banker or something, and
I was going to say that you need to either find a creative who is using none of the mediums that you are proficient in, or someone absolutely not creative.
Yeah, totally. Someone who appreciates art but doesn't. Yes, maybe. Yes, that would be a good idea. Maybe I should look into that. But anyway, I believe in destiny. I will see what will arrive next. Let's say. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. Well, we're almost at the top of the hour. Okay. I really don't want to wrap this up because I'm having so much fun. But
I have anything else you want. God, I don't know if anybody will listen to all of this in the full hour. She repeats herself a lot. They'll be like, yeah.
No, it's going to be an awesome episode. Unfortunately, I have a babysitter on the clock, so I have to wrap it up. He's almost 5 months old.
Wow.
Yeah.
God, do you sleep?
Well, you know what I actually do? We're going through phases, but we're lucky that he's pretty good sleeper during the night. It's days that bother me more because we're going through, those phases when he would just stop napping, and I'm just glued to him because mommy is the best toy.
Oh yeah.
And speaking of your teacher, like everybody is telling you like, oh, he's going to be your best creation ever. It's like, yeah, but I have a full studio of unfinished work.
Yeah, that's my question. Do you find time to make work?
I'm kind of, switch to tiny little pieces that are not that difficult and kind of don't take much time. I picked up some digital art. I'm kind of playing with that. I have no idea what's going to happen. And I keep my podcast, which is a source of inspiration every single conversation. And it's actually very interesting because every single conversation it can be like 180 degrees different from one another, but each of them is so inspiring and somehow just feels connected. Like I have that part, I understand this, I understand, like, and every single one of them gives me shivers, like I have like my heart skips the beat a little bit. So it's very funny because the last week I interviewed a woman who hates to call herself a storyteller, and she uses her art as a mean of actually quieting herself and um, going into the collaboration with nature, but in a totally isolated way, because in the past she worked in advertisement and there was a lot of storytelling, and that kind of gave her PTSD because it's not what she wanted to connect with, creatively. And now today I'm talking to you, and it's absolutely like 180 degrees opposite story, right?
Well, yeah, I can understand with the whole advertising, because all you're there to do is just sell,
yeah,
just tell people
yeah,
something, sell them a
yeah,
story, sell them a
yeah.
dream, sell them that, which can be very dangerous actually. And I can totally get why she would want to, retreat into nature. But no matter what, you can't escape the stories. We're in our story time, we're in our dream time. That's part of the human journey, you
Yeah,
know.
well, that said, she told me some interesting stories about her art, and so I think you would enjoy her interview.
Yeah, I'd love to check that out. Yeah, definitely. What's her
Well,
name?
um, her name is Daiga. All right. Well, to wrap this conversation up, I think what I want to ask you, I know that I keep hearing from different artists, like we touched a little bit on the frustration, and we touched a little bit on, even if you like, just don't procrastinate, go with it, be scared. If you fail, you fail. You learn from it. It's part of the process. A lot of the artists are, I know for sure, are being afraid of losing like like income, because there's and I hate bringing this up, but I think this is something that stalls a lot of artists who feel like they cannot afford living that open and rebellious life. So you are such an inspiration, because you are like, you embody all of that. You embody like, okay, I'm gonna try like a million different mediums, and heck it if I fail, whatever. And then like you're so vibrant, and you just unapologetically creative. And I like looking at you and talking to you, I can tell that you are a successful creator in whatever meaning you put into this word, right? So
Thank you.
I would like for you to give, I don't know, advice or a little piece of wisdom for all the other creatives who are like afraid to be that.
Well, listen, okay, I'll very simply say it. You have a week to live. That's it. You have a week to live. What are you going to do with that week? You're not going to worry about, obviously, not worrying about bills and money. I mean, I have those worries, and I go through moments where it's feast and famine. I'm not, I'm not in this for money. I probably should not say that, because I probably have to reframe that thinking. That's something I probably need to talk to a therapist about. I mean, there was a point in our college where I took all my banknotes, they were their little liras, and I sewed them together and I made curtains out of them. And and it's crazy. I made curtains out of them to show that this is what blinds people is money, and that it's the shield that covers our eyes from the 99% of the truth. And ironically enough, they disappeared. Someone obviously stole them. So I don't, but anyway, but that just shows. And at that time, I remember I was borrowing money off the laundromat lady up the road. I mean, it was kind of crazy. And I had this very romantic notion of art, and so I laugh when I hear myself, don't do it for the money. I mean, I'm at the point going, maybe I should make smaller pieces, they're easier to sell. But but then I'm like, Ego wants to go big or go home. I'm a big fan of Julian Schnabel, and I just look at him working at these huge pieces, and my heart beats, and I'm like, oh yes, and that joy is currency to me. And so if you can find other ways of making money, like I rent out my home in Ireland, it's great. It gives me time to create. And so that I'm not, so just, all I would just say is just keep creating. And, even if you don't have the means, and you use that as an excuse, that's absolute bullshit. I'm sorry, that's absolute. I will not accept that. You look at I've people who've nothing. I remember being in India and I see kids what they would create out of nothing. They take cow dung and make sculptures out of it, right? They didn't even have a pencil, right? They didn't even have, but they had their imagination. And again, I go back to my own experience as a child. I used what was around me, and sometimes, necessity is the birth of creations. It's the you get to become really creative. Like, sometimes having, like, even as a filmmaker, I learned a very valid lesson is that rules set you free. And one of those rules that you always come across a filmmaker is budget. There's never enough money. There's never enough that. So you have to be really creative and go, okay, I can't do this. So I have to work around, how can I make this interesting? How can I use what I already have or have access to, or even luckily I can get for free, or I can ask that person, oh, that person owes me a favor, or maybe I can try, maybe, and you become really imaginative and creative. Whereas if you were just given carte blanche to do anything you wanted with all the money in the world, you would get complete and utter block. You'd be completely blocked. I know I would. Like, those limitations are a certain freedom for me because I'm confined in certain limitations of what I can do, and I will milk those limitations. I will bleed them. Like, when I was in LA, I'll just quickly finish this up, this last year. So I ended up, there was an entertainment business that was, because a lot of business were closed down. And luckily enough, I got my hands on like these movie posters. Posters were used for the Oscars or whatever, like these big frames that they would make, these event manager they put up there. And I said, can I use them? And so I'd saved myself hundreds and hundreds of dollars, on frames. And I got to work big scale. I just used what people were throwing out. I also went out and bought God knows so much yarn that I didn't eat for weeks. Fine, grand, whatever. But like, and literally the best investment ever. I mean, I got to make the dream pieces that I'm so happy I created those. And it was just amazing. Ask people to help you, and they will, because people actually, especially in America, people get so excited by you doing stuff. And and there's a part of them that gets excited. They're a part of that. So all I would say is you've got nothing to lose. If you have nothing, you've nothing to lose. And so just, pen and paper, put it together, write down your dreams, write down the ideas, and listen to what the universe will tell you, will whisper ideas to you all the moment. Like watching the plastic bag floating in the wind. It's the most beautiful, poetic thing. And what is it? Didn't cost anything. Just a plastic bag that was just blowing in the wind. And yet I guarantee you're moved more by that. You put it in a movie, you put it in, actually there was a performance artist who used that originally, that was American Beauty, stole that from, and I can't remember his name, but a digital artist, and he used to film things like that, and they were the most poetic things. And it's all around you. It's everywhere. It's from the people you meet, to the children. That's why I say children are very important to watch, because they can use their imagination with everything. Give them stones and look what they can do with it. They paint it, they create characters, whatever. So I would say the world is your canvas and you get to be the paintbrush. So
beautiful. Thank you. And thank you so much for your time today. And I absolutely love this conversation. I hope we're going to stay in touch. And
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, no, now we need to have another conversation about Salvador Dali's wife. So just
I'm going to research her now. I'm going to definitely.
I will find. So I read a fascinating book that is actually pretty much the only resource about her life, and it goes from like her childhood and all the way through her death, and that's the only, at least what I found. And then there are bits and pieces, a little bit like little snippets of interviews here and some pictures over there, because she was so secretive. An interesting fact that she was keeping in touch with her ex-husband And they were exchanging for 10 years. They were exchanging very intimate letters. They were talking about, he was still talking about how much she is exciting him, and he was aroused every single time he was thinking about her, even though he lived with another woman, and she ruined his life. It's okay. And at some point they agreed that they are going to destroy those letters. So he would destroy the bunch of letters he received from her, and she would destroy the letters she received from him, because I don't know, they decided that, okay, the world doesn't need to know that. It's a very intimate thing. And he did his part. He burned all the letters from her, and she kept his. So this is how we have like a bunch of documentary about him, but not about her. So it's like she would, yeah. She's a woman of mysteries. She's absolutely mind blowing. She's not by all means, she's not a good human. Not a good person. I would probably not have a good.
How do you know she's not a good human?
A lot of the things that I have learned about her kind of makes me think that she was greedy. She was impatient. We all have our psychological problems. She probably never have dealt with hers in a way that, that was healthy, but nonetheless, she was just a force of nature. And what she has done, she has probably given the world some of the most creative surrealists, Salvador Dali included. So yeah, it's fascinating. Absolutely.
I think you need to follow that up more and maybe start writing about her.
I made a portrait of her.
Oh, you did?
I did, yes.
Share the link. I want to see that.
I will. And I used a very, very translucent metallic paint to give her Salvador Dali mustache.
Oh my God.
So when you look at her from one angle, you don't see the mustache, and then from another angle they just appear. Yeah.
And what did you learn about doing her portrait? Because I painted one hero of mine, and I learned it was one of the most profound experiences. So I'm curious to know, did you learn anything by doing a portrait? Was there something that... I did.
And again, let's just wrap this up and we'll talk about it offline a little bit, because we're going... This can be easily 2-hour conversation. No one is going to listen to this episode.
Okay.
All right. Well, everybody... Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. Vittoria, it's such a pleasure. Oh my God, I'm so happy I have met you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Right. Thank you for being in the art scene and giving this world so much, and for your inspiration. All right, We'll see you next time in the art scene. It has been another episode of In the Art Scene podcast. If you liked today's conversation, please give us a good review on Apple. And go listen to other great stories. Check out our website intheartscene.com, or follow us on Instagram at intheartscene for more content. If you are a creative and you want to share your story, shoot us a message from the website or DM us on Instagram. Look forward to seeing you next time in the art scene.